Hey friends, we hear people talk about all the time how they want to reach financial freedom. But here's the question that I have. Have you actually done the math to determine what that number is? Do you even know the number associated with financial freedom? And that's what, I've been thinking about, lately is like, okay, what does that look like? It reminds me, I always say that financial freedom is a journey. So if you don't know your number, how do you even know where to start or how, to get you, to your, I don't call it a destination, but you know what I'm saying, to get you to whatever goal you have for yourself, whatever number you assign for yourself, and that's what, I just wanted to jump on here and talk to you about today is because I was thinking about that, before I retired out of the military, I had to sit down and think, I'm like, okay, the military was all I knew. I served for 21 years. I went straight after high school. The only job I had before that was McDonald's. Okay. Okay. So the military was all I knew. So once I knew I was approaching retirement, I was like, okay, what do I want this to look like? How much money am I going to need? Is this retirement check gonna be enough for me to live on and to live comfortably? Because one thing that I knew about retiring from the military is that one, I wanted to take a year off. I didn't want to go to work right away. Or two, I might not never go back to work, right? I was like, I only wanted to go to work because I wanted to, not because I had to pay the bills. So that was my thought process. So with that in mind, I knew, I'm like, okay, what is that gonna look like? So I realized that I had to sit down and get all these thoughts, all of the dreams out of my head and put it down on paper, right? What does that look like? So basically what I did was I created something very simple that looked like this. I don't know, but it's just a spreadsheet. And basically what I did was all the different categories, right? I looked at what I call my four walls. Housing, okay, how much am I willing to spend on a mortgage? Because the thing about being in the military, in case you didn't know, they provided you money for housing, right? A certain amount for housing if you didn't live on the military installation at the time. So how much am I willing to afford on a mortgage? And at that time, I was in South Carolina and I was looking at relocating to Nevada, and Nevada was expensive. So I knew, okay, I wasn't going to buy a home if it was over a certain amount because I knew how much I wanted my mortgage to be. So not just the mortgage, okay, my utilities, gas, insurance, all of those type of things, right? Internet, car payment. Thank goodness I didn't have one at the time, but you get what I'm saying. If you have a car payment, if you have other debt, all of that type of stuff, that type of stuff has to be taken into consideration. So once I got got a number that I felt comfortable with, I'm like, okay, I can actually do this, right? I could actually live off of my retirement check and be able to take a year off, be able to not have to go back to work if I didn't want to. Seeing that number, it turned a dream or a thought into reality. Any other thing that I was anxious about, I was no longer anxious because I saw that. And I saw like, okay, I know that there's areas where I can make cuts and, adjustments and stuff like that, but at a bare minimum. And here's the thing, once you sit down to do this exercise, and I encourage you to do so, you really need to think about, if you're not in the military, if you're still, working, what would it take for you to replace your income at your job? Right? I know a lot of people talk about, when they're looking at their money, they don't want to have to work for anybody. They want location freedom. They want time freedom, all of that. And it's all good. But what is that going to cost you? If you left your job tomorrow, do you know the amount that you need to live on? I call it like your survival number, right? Just the bare minimum. Now, I'm not talking about vacations and all of that type stuff, but I would include that because you don't want your quality of life to go down dramatically because you choose to leave a job, or worse yet, you get laid off. But you need to know how much will it cost you to replace that income. And that's what it's all about. When you're trying to determine that financial freedom number, you got to get specifics. You got to know what that looks like for you in your life, not some arbitrary number that you hear people throw around. Oh, 10K a month, 100K a year. Me personally, I think I needed roughly about 2,500, close to 3,000. Now, granted, I did have some savings if I needed to touch it, but I didn't need to. You want to know why my number was so low? I didn't have any debt. I didn't have any car payment and credit cards, that type of stuff. So you have to think about all of those things, all of those other obligations that you would be responsible for if you want to replace yourself at your job or replace your income without having to go and get another job, right? I have met plenty of people while serving in the military. They would get out one day and the very next day they came back as a civilian. Same job, just a different outfit. And there's nothing wrong with it, but it wasn't for Ann. I wasn't gonna do it and didn't, right? So, the biggest point I'm trying to make here is just make sure that you know your numbers if you're looking to start your journey to better manage your finances, to start a journey of financial freedom. It's gonna look different for everybody. It's gonna look different for everybody. So, I'll leave you with this challenge. If you don't know your numbers already, take some time. It can be on a spreadsheet. It can be old-fashioned paper and pencil, okay? It doesn't matter as long as you get it done. And once you see those numbers in front of you, you may realize your dream may not be too far off. This is something that you can do sooner rather than later. But you're not gonna know that until you know your numbers. So I challenge you to do the math, know your numbers. So with that, I'll holler at you guys next time.